if you like, not just an expert, but you spend a lot of time in this region, not just in politics, but with, as it were, with the people. First of all, let's just start with, do you think that the American-Israeli action has ended up making the Iranian regime more or less secure?
What it's done is it's done a lot of nationalism, understandably. When people are striking you and attacking you, even Iranians who, the majority of whom hated this loathsome regime, probably 85-90% of the Iranian population, if you went back 3-4 weeks, wanted this regime gone. It's theocratic, it's murdered thousands of its own people. But when you start being bombed by Israel and the US, when you see Trump in full-on, I'm going to wipe out all your electricity infrastructure, desalination plants, then understandably, you feel a bit of nationalist resistance. And Iran is a country like Russia, like Ukraine, like Israel, with a very strong nationalist identity and a really strong sense that the more people attack them, the more they stand up and defend. And we saw this in Afghanistan actually very clearly. I mean, we spent $2 trillion in Afghanistan fighting the Taliban, who nobody, or very few people really liked. And after 20 years, we basically ended up handing the country back to the Taliban again. Have to keep remembering that.
There is, I suppose, a belief, a strategy, which some people believe in, that decapitation could have weakened the regime to the extent that some on-the-street revolt, as it were, could have made it fall.
Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. That's clearly something that the US and Israel believed, which is why they killed Ayatollah Khamenei, the former supreme leader, and indeed his daughter-in-law and his wife and the rest of them. It's a very weird strategy. I'm struggling to think of any historical example where simply by killing the leadership, you spontaneously create a revolution. And it implies that they thought somehow that the Iranian regime was just about 5 or 6 people at the top, or 50 people at the top, who, if they removed them, they tried the same against Hamas, they tried the same against Hezbollah. It implies that they don't fully understand that there will be, whether we like it or not, the majority of people may not like the regime, but there are millions of people who support it, who are in the Revolutionary Guard, in the Basij militia, in all bits of this, and that taking out the top people historically doesn't work. It's a very strange idea that it would.
I think there was an idea by some in the White House that they could do a version of what they did in Venezuela, which is part decapitation, if that's makes sense, but essentially to remove the top people and install some people that they could do a deal with, like the now deceased Larijani. Mr. Trump, I gather, has said there's a problem now that we can't find anybody to talk to because we've killed them all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really believe any of the things that the Americans are saying. I mean, if that had been the strategy, you would have wanted to be talking in advance. In Venezuela, it appears the CIA had already negotiated with Delcy Rodriguez to take over. There's no sign at all that they had identified people, secured them, had conversations with them. And it's also very difficult to believe that that would work. I mean, this is not Venezuela. This is a regime which, for nearly 50 years, has been about the Islamic Revolution, about opposing the US, about opposing Israel. The idea that you were suddenly going to find a new leadership was a little implausible. Anyway, whether it was a good gamble or not, I thought it was a rotten gamble. What we know for sure is that it's all gone wrong. So they were wrong, if that's what they thought.
How do you respond to Mr. Trump's démarche, I suppose is the right word, this morning, in which he says, you've got 48 hours to fully open the Strait of Hormuz, or else we will destroy your largest power stations?
So I think there, Trevor, you've seen why the UK needs to remain as far out of this war as possible. If you connect yourself to President Trump, you are in danger of connecting yourself to somebody who is now threatening the most extreme, reckless war crimes. Right? You do not want to be part of this. You do not want to be an ally with this Trump administration and this Israeli administration, if what they're genuinely saying is they're going to wipe out all the electricity infrastructure of Iran, who's getting punished? The Iranian people. What's going to happen? Drinking water is going to go. The hospitals are not going to function. You will end up indirectly with thousands of people dying who wouldn't otherwise die. This is not legitimate warfare. That's why you cannot be part of this.
You think that there is something deeper here, though, don't you? You think that there is a cultural assault, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, I think we would find it very, very difficult to imagine right-wing parties or Europeans remotely sympathizing with this type of war conducted almost anywhere in the world. I think there's a lot of very successful fanning up of suspicion, I'm afraid, in many cases of Muslims. And that is being used to make people tempted, particularly on the right and the far right in Britain, to think this is a good idea. When if you step back and thought about, would you think this was something that was legitimate to do in Asia or something legitimate to do in Africa or something legitimate to do in Europe, you'd think no.
So would you be against what this government has decided to do, which is to allow the Americans to use British bases to launch sorties against Iran?
Yes, I think it was completely the wrong thing to do. The correct position was the position which Spain took from the beginning. If you don't agree with this war, you don't facilitate this war. In effect, what they've done is they have become, under international law, a party to this war. Once you start allowing the US to use your bases, and they're saying it's for very limited purposes, there's been some very, very good reporting on what's going on from those bases. It certainly doesn't look as though the US is using British bases for limited purposes. It looks pretty much as though the US are doing whatever they want with those bases.
What are you hearing from the rest of the Middle East, specifically from the Arab world? And of course, you've lived in the Arab world for a long time. But let me put it crassly. Who do they hate most right now? Iran, Israel, or America?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think at the moment they pretty much hate all of them in very different ways. Essentially, this action has put back the economies of the Gulf by 10 or 15 years. The impacts on places like Dubai, which have over 40 years, created economic miracles. I mean, you know Dubai, many listeners will know Dubai. It's probably the easiest place to talk about. In a sense, it's heartbreaking. They took places in the desert and they have built them into financial capitals, places where a lot of expatriates moved, airport hubs, innovation hubs, and it's all being destroyed. It's being destroyed because the US-Israeli strikes are being conducted using their bases. And those countries, UAE or United Arab Emirates or Qatar, felt that having American bases made them safe. They thought those bases were their protection against Iran. What they've discovered is having US bases, and this would apply to Britain and Germany as well, makes you a target. Because obviously, a country that's being attacked from a base will try to take out that base, and then will take out the infrastructure around it. So, who do they hate more? They absolutely blame the US and Israel for triggering a war that they warned against. These Gulf countries, these Arab countries said, don't do this, because if you do this, you will be creating mayhem for the world. And now they're very angry with Iran because they feel Iran is very unfairly targeting them for a war that they think the US and Israel are running and that they've been dragged into reluctantly.
Very briefly, from your point of view then, can we get out of this, or are we already in too deep?
We need to get out as soon as we can. Can we? That's statesmanship. Should we? 100%. We need to get out. Israel needs to get out. The US needs to get out. The Gulf needs to get out. Every day this continues, we get closer to global economic meltdown and closer, I'm afraid, to a much bigger conflict, the beginnings almost of a Third World War.
On that, literally on that bombshell, thank you very much, Rory Stewart. In just a moment, we'll hear once again from our panel.